Hey guys, welcome to the Fancy Footy Floodbath. And today we're going to look at the cheap options and rookie options that might play round one. So you can be prepared for rookies. Obviously, there's been a lot of talk in the preseason and recently that there's not going to be a lot of rookies available. Let me just tell you that that's not a new thing. We hear that pretty much every year for those of you who don't know. And something that I mentioned in the other video is that this last hit out that the players have during this week, towards the end of this week, maybe against their VFL team or an intra-club, someone always stands out, and there's usually no indication that that guy's going to get picked at all from the other preseason games or the community series. And that happens every year. There's usually 3 or 4 of those guys that are just picked out of the blue that we never expected and we never thought about. And so don't be too worried about the rookies. And I'm going to try and give you a bit of an indication of who's going to be picked. We're going to look at guys that basically are under 300 and probably some of the others that are around the fringe. Now, we'll go through every team and we'll start at the top in alphabetical order with Adelaide. Now, first and foremost, I just want to mention we haven't seen Millera in the community series. We haven't seen him in the trial match. And I would be a little bit concerned. The fact that we haven't seen him yet. Now, I know he's 378. He's a bit more of a mid-price player, but have a little bit of a backup idea and a backup structure if Millera doesn't play or doesn't get picked round one, because there's half a chance he may not. So let's arrow down to some of the other guys. I think Rochelle is a lock, 280K mid-forward. And I'm even debating that he might be on my field because he looks like a pretty good scorer and knows how to find the ball. So I think he's pretty much a lock for round one, so you can give him a big tick. Saligo or Saligo, he looks to fit in with their structure pretty well, 220K mid. I would say he's probably a 60% chance of being picked. That's just a guess, but I wouldn't be surprised if he's in their round one team name on the bench. And probably at worst, maybe an emergency. Let's go down to the rest of the Adelaide young guys, and there's nothing much else there. Maybe Pedler might get a look in for round one, but he has not shown us yet that he can be much of a scorer. Let's go down to Brisbane. And their cheap options, actually, we might do that the other way. Okay, so there's not a lot of meat on the bone with Brisbane. Harry Sharp got a bit of a look in the other day in the community series, but not a lot of time. So I wouldn't expect him to be picked in round one. Darcy Wilmot has had that suspension, so he's probably going to miss round one, and he may get a look in round two, but you know, you can't really pick him in round one if he's not picked in round one because you just don't know for sure in round two, do you? Noah Answorth might get picked, the 325 defender, but he's not a huge scorer. Cockatoo, 339, looked all right the other day. Another one who's not a big scorer. So that's about where it starts and finishes for Brisbane. Obviously, Rain is a bit of a lock, 396. And Darcy Fort might play that back up in the ruck to the big O. Let's go down to Carlton. There's one guy that was a standout for me for Carlton the other night, and that's Jordan Boyd. I think Jordan Boyd is a defender, 190K. There he is, and he's on my bench at the moment. I think he will be playing in round one. He looked to fit into their back line quite well. Those of you who are interested in Corey Durden, he got a bit of an ankle injury. I'm not sure if he's going to be okay for round one. Looked pretty good before he got that, though. But I've heard that he may not be ready for round one as a result of that injury. They showed us a bit of Brody Kemp and Sam Phillip in that trial game, and they both looked pretty good, but we didn't see them in the community series, so they're probably not going to be in their round one. Caleb Marchbank's not going to be ready. Oscar McDonald looked good at 343, and Curnow, 347, is probably going to be right for round one, even though he had that little tweak in the trial game, but they said he was fine. So let's move on to Essendon. Just trying to give you a little bit of Collingwood, sorry. Just trying to give you a little bit of variety so that we've got a bit of an understanding of who's going to be there. Charlie Dean's going to miss round one, unfortunately. He was a handy option for us as a 190K defender. Will Kelly, we didn't see him in the community series, so I'd be surprised if he's picked in round one, and not a great scorer anyway. Dacos, obviously a lock for our teams, 284K, looked awesome yesterday and in the trial game. So he's going to be fine. Ginnivan is an interesting one, 334 forward. If we find that there's not a lot of rookies, Ginnivan's not a bad option. He looked really good in both games and still a pretty cheap forward. Finlay McRae is another one that people are looking at, 351K, and he might get a look in round one as well. But other than that, not a lot in the rookie department. Isaac Chugga and Reef McInnes, I've heard a little bit about. They had a bit of a go the week before in that Hawthorn game, but we didn't see them in the community series, and that's always a flag that they're probably not going to pick round one. But once again, as I said, you never know. With this thing on the weekend, with their last hit out, they may get a look in and then impress and then get picked in round one. Kane Baldwin, 190K, forward, mature age. He's a tall, but he's not a big tall, so he can still kind of move around the ground, look pretty good. If we're desperate for rookies, he might be a really good option. And he seems to look like he's going to average around the 50 to 60 mark. And, you know, probably will get a 40 every now and then, but may get the 70s as well. So looked really good and did a lot of team things, which in time might convert a little bit more to fantasy points. So keep him in mind. Nick Martin, I'm a big rap for, 190K. Looked awesome. Only played a half the other night against Melbourne, but looked magnificent for 57 points and 190K forward. Hopefully he gets that DPP mid at round 6, because he seems to be moving mostly through the midfield. McDonagh is one that we've been looking at in the preseason, but I don't think he's ready yet. Mature age rookie, about 25 years old. If he comes in later in the year, then jump on. He's going to be a reasonably good player and a good scorer for us. Ben Hobbs is another one. Looked good in that last quarter in the trial match, but didn't really get a go against Melbourne the other night. He'll be a big ball getter when his time comes as well. And that's about it for Essendon with the cheap options. Let's go down to Fremantle. Obviously, Luke Valenti's retired, which is a bit of a shame. Joel Weston played all right in that Eagles game in the trial game, but didn't get a go in the community series. So you probably cross him off your list, and probably not going to be a great scorer anyway. I was a bit disappointed to not see O'Driscoll yesterday in the community series game against the Eagles, because he looked really good the week before. So obviously he's a little bit maybe in their best 26 or 27, but not in the best 22. Erasmus, we didn't get a look at either, but could be good if he can find some form in the waffle later in the year, 272 mid. And Liam Henry's someone that a lot of people are talking about playing on a wing. I still don't think Liam Henry's going to be a big ball getter. 317K forward, so I'd be steering clear of him personally, but you might be keen to have him. And Will Brodie and Michael Frederick both look awesome in both those two games. But we need to keep in mind that they were playing the Eagles, and we didn't get a look at them playing any other opposition. Geelong are out there now. It's just after half-time, I think, in that Gold Coast game. They're giving Nick Stevens a bit of a run as a defender. Whether that means that converts to a round one opportunity, I'm not sure. But he's scoring. He scored pretty well to this stage. I think it's, as I said, it's early in the third. And I think Nick Stevens is, he's only 24. The other one who's cheap is Cooper Stevens with the PH. He's 190K mid. And he looks a big body, 34 points he's had already, and he looks quite good out there for Geelong. Hopefully he gets a game in round one. Sam DeConning's the other one, defender forward. They're missing Tom Stewart at the moment in that Geelong game against Gold Coast. He's not playing, so there's a bit of more meat on the bone and a bit more points for the Zach Guthries, for the Sam DeConning, and these sort of guys down back, which probably they wouldn't normally get. So DeConning's numbers are a little bit inflated. He's got 54 actually to this stage, early in the third. So that's probably increasing his chance of being picked for round one, getting plenty of the ball. And he looks pretty solid down back. And I've got my eye on him for that utility spot, just as a defender forward, could be really handy for changing players over. Tyson Stengel, 298, doesn't seem to be doing a lot tonight in this Gold Coast game. Slippery conditions may not be suiting him. And he had the 4 goals last week. And what happens, as we always see, he's only had 12 points. What we usually see is these guys get a big score one week and then they get locked down on the following week. So Mitch Nevitt's not ready yet, seems to not be available yet. And that's about it for Geelong. So we move on to Gold Coast now, and Elijah Hollins, a lot of people have still got him in their team. From what we've seen with the trial game and the game today against Geelong, he's not in favour. I don't think he's going to be picked for round 1. I'll be surprised if he is. So you need to make alternative plans just in case. They've played Jared Witts today, which was a surprise. We didn't think we'd see him till round 1. So Ned Moyle's probably off the table at 190k mid as well. The other one, James Sitas, I think it is pronounced, 190k. We haven't had a look at him either. So he's off the table too. Alex Davies hasn't been able to replicate what he did last week in the trial game. So he might be one to just leave out as well. He's pushing 400 anyway. GWS, let's have a look at their young guys. Not a lot here for us with GWS. Maybe Jake Steen a little bit. 190k may get a go. Connor Stone, 258k. Finn Callahan doesn't seem to have been on the radar at all. James Peatling, who played the end of last year and looked pretty good, 366k defender, maybe pick for round 1. Had a bit of a look yesterday. Braden Pruce has just been suspended for 1 game, so he won't play round 1 if he accepts that punishment. Not a lot. With the good teams, it's harder to find rookies because they're pretty established in their structure. Hawthorn have obviously got a few younger guys because they're a rebuilding team. Ned Long looked all right when he played the other night. Certainly looked good the week before in that trial game. So he might get a look in, maybe an emergency, maybe just outside their best 22. Connor McDonald is a lock for me, 240k mid. Josh Ward's a lock, 278k mid. And I think they'll both be picked in round 1. Finn McGuinness, 311k mid forward. I think he'll get picked round 1. Has had an awesome preseason by all reports. And I think he'll get a go and looks like he fits into their team and what Sam Mitchell wants really, really well. So I expect him to be picked in round 1. So he's another option for us. If you want to go a bit more expensive, you got your Jai Newcombs, your Connor Nashes there as well, who are over 400. Connor Nash looked very good the other day. Let's move on to Melbourne, obviously a bit harder to find with Melbourne. Taj Woden has been very impressive in the preseason apparently, but that's a pretty hard team to break into. Cade Chandler, the same, 190k, been there a while. Impressive player. Toby Bedford's been just on the outskirts, but hasn't had a look in with both of these games. Joel Smith might be good. I've mentioned him as just a green dot on the bench, 220k. Looks to be set in their defensive system, and they like him down there. And just a 220k defender if we're stuck for rookies. And not much else there with Melbourne, as you'd expect. They're not going to be playing a lot of young players. They're still right in the premiership window. North Melbourne. Well, I was expecting and hoping to see Patrick Walker in this game yesterday against the Swans, but didn't get a look in at all, unfortunately. Looked really impressive in the trial game, but must be still outside the best 22. Don't expect him to be picked round 1. Miller Bergman also looked good in that trial game, but nothing yesterday. Josh Goad, a bit of look in at the end, but no, 248 didn't seem to be in their plans. But once again, as I said, they can always pull surprises with their team when they pick them round 1. Tristan Cherry was the highest scoring fantasy score on the ground in that game, 110 forward. But geez, I'll be surprised if he produces that often. That was one right out of the box, probably trying to fight for that second ruck spot with Coleman Jones, and there's a fair battle going on there. Horn Francis looked really good, 290k. No worries there with Horn Francis. Some people have been looking at Will Phillips. Will Phillips, no good at this stage for fantasy, but I'm sure in the long term he's going to be a very good player. Port Adelaide, haven't seen Jace Burgoyne, was hoping to get a bit of a look at him, no good. Sam Skinner got a bit of a go at the end of the trial game last week. but nothing on the weekend against Adelaide. Sam Hayes looked all right as that backup ruck for Lycett. A very popular player for their benches. Jackson Meader and McEntee were given kind of equal time in midfield and running around, but whether they're picked in round one, I think that's a bit of a question mark. I'm not sure. They've got a few guys to come back as well, Port, I think. But they do have a few injuries with Robbie Gray, etc. So maybe they might give those guys a go. I haven't written off Martin Frederick, although we haven't seen him in the preseason. 266K. Josh Sin, 268. Well, we're going to be battling for rookies maybe, and he might be a very good option, yet not probably a huge scorer. Lockie Jones is one I've got my eye on, 368K defender, looked awesome in that Adelaide game, and but they do have plenty of options from half-backs. So he might get picked round one, and he'd be a handy inclusion if we have trouble finding rookies in round one. But once again, Port Adelaide are established team in the premiership window. They're not going to be playing huge amounts of kids. Richmond, I would say no for Maurice Rioli. Doesn't seem to score enough at this stage. Samson Ryan, a bit the same if he gets a look in. Ben Miller looked a little bit set down back there in their side, so he might be okay, but probably not a huge scorer. Ralph Smith looked very, very good again in both games. Didn't do anything at all to discourage us picking him. He's got that dual position status as well, mid forward. And while he's not going to get the 80s that he got on the weekend because it was Hawthorn, and they were obviously letting a lot of their kids kick it around down back there. Even Rioli got an 80. So I wouldn't expect that score every week, but it shows they've got a lot of faith in him and they like him down back, and hopefully he gets picked in round one. Josh Gibkiss looked like he was a lock for round one, 274K defender, and surprisingly scored pretty well. But once again, I guess we have to remember that it was Hawthorn, and he's probably not going to get that freedom every week. Didn't see Thompson Dow in the community series. Saw him in the trial match, looked really good, but it's a bit of a worry that he didn't get that community series look. I heard that maybe there was a little bit of an injury there, or they're just maybe managing him. Let's have a look at St Kilda. Now, St Kilda have all of a sudden got a lot of injuries. Jack Hayes is an interesting one. Ruck forward, 190K, maybe an option for our utility, just to give us that backup in ruck, and he could be that second option if Ryder takes a little bit longer to come back than we expect. Mitch Owens looked really good when they threw him in the middle, 226 mid. Wangani Malera the same, 270K. Defender mid looked really good when he came in as well at the end of the game the other night. And that's about all for St Kilda. Moving on to the Swans. 3 teams to go. Will Gould, we still can't get a look at Will Gould. I don't know what he's done or what he hasn't done at the Swans, but they don't seem to want to show much of him. Corey Warner didn't get a look. Sheldrick didn't get a look. Matty Roberts got a little look and looked okay. Paddy McCartan looks really good at 271K. Will play probably most weeks with his brother down back there, Tom, but don't expect him to be a huge scorer, but he's got that chance to be playing every week and give you a green dot on the bench. Braden Campbell, they played a bit through Braden Campbell the other night, but not a huge score. 414, I think it is, so just probably stay clear of him. Once again, the Swans are kind of in the premiership window, and they've shown they can blood a few kids, but they're not going to play a huge amount of them. Greg Clark obviously is injured. Can't wait for him to come back. Zane True is injured as well. He'd be being given a go if he was okay, because he's a good midfielder. We've seen that in the waffle. Dixon has come in and be put on their list. Tom Joyce is the other one to keep an eye out for on their list. Hopefully he gets put on their list, and Patrick Naish, because they'll be cheap options in the midfield while the injuries are there for the Eagles, and could be good options as cash cows for our team. Brady Hoff looked really good yesterday with that 60-odd score, 230K mid. Chess is injured. Obviously, they used Rioli through the middle yesterday, which I was really surprised about, probably maybe trying to get his running and his fitness up a bit. And he looked okay, 293K, but I think it'll be a while before he scores well. Connor West, 362, looked a lock for me for round one, was excellent yesterday against Freo, and Luke Foley looked pretty good as well, the 363K. So there's a few cheap options with the Eagles and their injuries, so you might want to give their team a bit of a look before round one and see who's picked, because there's plenty of young guys that could get a look in. Robbie McComb for the Bulldogs has got a bit of a look in both games and looked all right, so he might be half a chance for their bench. Jones, we saw him in the trial batch, but not in the Amy series, so he might be put on ice a little bit for their best 22 and might not be ready yet. Ed Richards, I've spoken about as a defender, running defender, 368, still a tempting price, probably got some upside, but you're taking a bit of a risk there as well. And that's about it. So I hope I've given you a bit of an idea of who's going to be picked in the rookies in round one. And when you go through every team, you actually see there's a lot more than you think. I hope you had a pen and paper ready. And if you didn't, probably watch it again and write them down, because there are a lot more than we think. And as I said, when the round one teams are announced very soon, in 7 or 8, 9, 10 days time, there'll probably be a lot more there than we realize. So just keep an eye out for the round one teams. Obviously, they're pretty important in our structure. And the other thing I wanted to mention about structure is that, how many rookies are available in each line probably determines the structure we go with when it starts the season and starts our fantasy teams. Because if you've only got 2 decent rookies as defenders, then you probably need to fill it with a few more mid-price and a few more speculatives, and use your rookies on the ground in other lines where there are more available. So just keep that in mind for round one. Anyway, guys, thank you for watching, and we'll have more videos leading up to round one. Just 9 days to go, so we're all getting very excited. Thanks for watching. Thanks for subscribing. Thanks for your support, and we'll talk to you again soon. Thanks, guys. Bye.